A small plane carrying 10 people mysteriously crashes deep in the Mexican rainforest. A flight attendant dies on impact, and the remaining survivors are murdered one by one. They face not only a shortage of food and water, but also the urgent need to identify the killer among them. The first episode of the new series, 9 Bodies in a Mexican Morgue, is packed with suspense. Who will survive the perilous rainforest? Let's wait and see. On a small propeller plane flying from Guatemala to Houston, Amy is puzzled to see forest instead of ocean below. The flight attendant explains that the pilot sometimes chooses alternate routes to avoid bad weather. But what should have been a 3-hour flight has now lasted 4. In reality, the plane's GPS has completely malfunctioned, and the panicked pilot's distress calls to the control tower go unanswered. With fuel depleted, he desperately records a final message for his wife. As the plane rapidly loses altitude, passengers start to notice something's wrong. Before they can react, the propellers stop and the plane plunges into the lush jungle. The dense branches cushion the impact, preventing the plane from breaking apart. All passengers, secured by seatbelts, are largely unharmed, except for the unfortunate flight attendant who doesn't make it.
Nothing you can do for her. It's a cervical fracture.
Passengers Kevin and Zach force open the cockpit door to find the pilot impaled by a thick branch. Realizing he's still breathing faintly, one of the men quickly pulls out the branch. By now, other passengers have opened the cabin door, but the engine has caught fire. Acrid smoke causes panic. The first man to jump out, instead of fleeing, rummages through the luggage compartment. Sonia, a seemingly capable female passenger, quickly grabs the cabin's fire extinguisher and puts out the flames.
You're not serious. What's in there that's so important to you? You could have got killed?
My things.
8 passengers and the pilot survive, though the pilot is severely injured. No one knows where they are, and cell phones have no signal. While everyone ponders how to seek rescue, the man who first escaped carefully inspects his luggage, arousing curiosity about its contents. Due to the hot, humid jungle climate, Sonja suggests moving the flight attendant's body away to prevent decay and avoid attracting animals. Her calm judgment reveals extensive outdoor survival experience. In contrast, Amy and her husband seem lost and panicked. Suddenly, Amy hears a twig snap, but sees only rustling bushes in the distance. Seeing Sonia enter the cabin, the fat lady follows, suspecting she's hoarding supplies. Sonia explains she's taking inventory to ration food and water for longer survival.
The plane will have its own water tank, if only for the toilet.
Well, we can't drink that.
Depends how quickly they find us.
The lady dismisses this, believing the airline will quickly send a rescue team once they realize the plane is missing. Meanwhile, Kevin and Zach find a hollow to place the flight attendant's body. Before they can catch their breath, they learn the pilot's condition is worsening. In great pain and struggling to breathe, he manages to tell them the crash was due to GPS failure. Seeing his agony, Zach urges Kevin, a doctor, to help.
Who told you I was a doctor?
Faced with Kevin's puzzled look, Zach explains that Kevin had earlier mentioned the flight attendant's cervical fracture, a medical term.
Anyone else would say she had a broken neck.
So what are you, a detective?
Kevin reluctantly admits he was a doctor, but isn't anymore. He diagnoses the pilot with a pneumothorax, requiring open chest surgery. However, lacking proper medical equipment, Kevin refuses to take the risk. With no alternatives, the others can only pray for quick rescue. As the sun sets, Zach suggests everyone introduce themselves to facilitate cooperation for survival. Zach is an insurance investigator who just wrapped up an arson fraud case. It's no wonder he has such a keen eye for detail that he deduces Kevin's medical background. Amy and Dan are newlyweds returning from their honeymoon. Travis and Lisa are an American couple who own a chain of motels and are on vacation. Their condescending attitude towards others hints at racist tendencies. Sonia is reluctant to share about herself, only mentioning she's traveling.
You work?
Why are you asking me these questions? What do you want to know? I don't want to answer your questions. You okay with that?
Sure, yeah. She seems to have a troubled past. Kevin, formerly a doctor, now sells medical equipment. Lastly, there's Carlos, a Mexican wrestler headed to the US for a match in 3 days, explaining how he easily kicked open the cabin door earlier. Zach's professional instincts kick in as he analyzes their situation. Their only hope for rescue is the plane's emergency locator transmitter if it wasn't damaged in the crash. The pilot's mention of GPS failure indicates he was navigating by map and compass, so they can use the map tomorrow to determine their location. The fact that the plane caught fire but didn't explode after crashing suggests the fuel tank was empty, leaving them without fuel. Zach advises collecting cabin cushions and blankets for the night.
Here's a question. Who put you in charge?
Zach retorts that if Kevin were willing to treat the pilot, he'd have the right to lead. Kevin defensively explains he can't risk the pilot dying during surgery. To prevent an argument, Lisa changes the subject to water and food. They're down to 15 bottles of water, some veggie salads, and fruit cups, clearly not enough to sustain 9 people for long. They'll need to forage tomorrow. Before eating, Travis pops his heart meds. He's got enough for 6 days, which should be plenty if rescue comes soon. Suddenly, the pilot's coughing worsens, his pneumothorax getting worse. Amy can't stand by idly and scolds everyone for giving up without trying to save the pilot. This particularly stings Kevin, who, after hesitating, finally agrees to perform emergency surgery. He instructs Sonia and Zach to prepare half a gallon of boiling water, antibiotic ointment, and bandages from the first aid kit, and a bottle of vodka. Kevin has some tools in his bag, but lacks the crucial scalpel.
You have this.
Okay. That'll do, yeah.
Travis offers his knife, raising Zach's suspicions about why a motel owner carries a hunting knife. Kevin cuts open the pilot's shirt, exposing the wound. Without proper disinfectant, he sterilizes the knife with boiling water. He takes a swig of vodka to steady his nerves, using the rest to disinfect the pilot's wound and his own hands. With no anesthetic, the pilot bites down on Zach's belt.
And it might be fatal. Just remember, you wanted me to do this. I'm not promising anything.
Kevin makes another disclaimer, hinting at past troubles in his medical career. He then inserts the knife between the pilot's ribs to release the trapped air. The screams echoing through the dense forest are chilling. Amy and her husband, hiding in the cabin, are terrified. Amy again senses a watching presence, but only sees distant rustling bushes. As Carlos walks alone into the forest, the Travis couple eyes his suitcase, wondering what was so valuable that he risked his life to save it from the fire. Lisa tries to open it, but finds it locked.
Goddamn Latino.
Meanwhile, Kevin finishes the surgery, but can't guarantee against post-op infection or shock given the primitive conditions. It's all up to fate now. At night, everyone except Amy and Dan sleeps outside the stuffy cabin. Carlos exercises on a tree trunk, preparing for his wrestling match. A shadowy figure sneaks into the camp, first stealing Travis's heart medication, then forcefully pressing a piece of clothing over someone's face. The next morning, they find the pilot dead, his eyes bloodshot and face contorted. Kevin feels guilty, but is puzzled by the lack of infection or internal bleeding signs. Lisa seems to notice something, but keeps quiet.
You got any ideas?
How would I know?
Fast forward 8 days. In the Mexican desert, a pickup truck stops on a hill near a military camp. The driver pretends to fix the car while his female passenger observes the camp through binoculars. A chopper flies in, and she perks up.
Right on time.
One by one, body bags are unloaded and taken to the morgue. In an office, an officer has 10 passports on his desk, belonging to the folks on that ill-fated flight. Oddly, they've only recovered 9 bodies. It's hard to imagine what transpired over those 8 days. Who was the final survivor, and where did they go? Could they be the killer who murdered the other passengers? The woman spying on the camp seems to have anticipated this outcome. What's her connection to the killings? This first episode's got more questions than answers, leaving us chomping at the bit for what comes next. Buckle up, folks. This ride's just getting started.